Hello and welcome back to the J&Z podcast. My name is Jace Van Ort,
And I'm Zeth Makalo.
and today we're going to be jumping right into things, talking about a classic superhero movie. We're continuing our Spider-Man review series. We started last week with Into the Spider-Verse, but now we're going to the sweet roots of it with the Raimi trilogy, the original Spider-Man movie. So Zeth, I kind of have a thought, but how would you describe this movie in one word?
Cheesy.
Cheesy it is. Yes, that is an excellent answer.
But it's a good cheesy. It's a good cheesy.
It is a very good cheesy. This movie certainly showed its age. I'm not so sure about you, Zeth, but I don't remember this movie from when I was a kid. It just wasn't a massive part of my childhood, and I don't have a lot of nostalgia for it, so I was able to look at it from a more, modern day kind of point of view. And did you watch this a lot as a kid? What's your relationship with the movie?
I remember watching it when I was a kid. I don't have a lot of nostalgia for it. It's one of those movies I watched as a kid. I just don't have as much nostalgia for it as, say, the Amazing Spider-Man series. I was really able to not have nostalgia glasses on when I was watching this. I was able to see it has aged a little bit in some areas. For instance, the visual effects, they have some good moments, but they have some very bad moments.
The actual stuff that they did for physical visual effects, they sounded fine. The explosions looked just fine. But anytime the Green Goblin or Spider-Man is swinging around, it was CGI and very blurry CGI.
Mm-hmm.
Or it was all of the above, and it was so dark you could barely see it because it wouldn't look good during the daytime.
Yeah, there was lots of shots where the characters, they looked off in their size when they were CGI'd. Like there's an instance when Goblin hops on his glider and it's like he's really tiny compared to the people in the background, and he's like just a little bit in front of him. It's really off.
Yeah, I mean, especially watching it on something that like a TV that's able to show blacks a lot more clearly, I was able to see it. It was kind of hard to tell what's going on sometimes because 95% of the screen would almost be pitch black. I know I'm exaggerating, but they really shadowed a lot of the fight scenes so that it would look better. Because there's nothing worse than bad CGI during the day. At least you can kind of cover it up with nighttime.
Yeah. There's that one scene, it's not the best, you can still tell it's CGI, but there's the part when he's in his wrestler outfit and he's like crawling over the walls trying to look for the guy who shot his uncle.
Yeah.
That just looks pretty bad. But in all seriousness, this movie is really important as part of the superhero genre. Before you had, some Marvel movies, you had, the cheesy Captain America movie, you had other movies that were before from DC. You had Superman with Christopher Reeves, you had Michael Keaton's Batman, and some other ones before that. But really, this movie, and then I hate X-Men, but this movie in particular really put the stamp on superhero movies that it can be a viable genre and it can make a lot of money.
Yeah, it's part of the reason why everybody loves Superman so much. And there's certainly the visual stuff can certainly be forgiven due to it being 2002. That's just age. That's just how that works. But the actual core of the movie, besides its other cheesy moments, especially what they do with the romantic dialogue, that was rough at the end there. But besides that, I think it actually provides a great tone for the entire city. I like the way it feels. And I think that it was a decent enough story. It wasn't this almost empty feeling, world-ending scenario. It felt a lot more personal. It wasn't the Avengers, blasting off in rocket ships and all this explosions. It was just Peter Parker trying to figure out his life. And yeah. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I liked a lot of that's the reason Peter Parker to a lot of people and Spider-Man is really great character to a lot of people, because he's more down to earth. He's a person that has to pay bills. He has to maintain a job on top of being a superhero. So that's why he's a lot more personal and relatable to a lot more people. Um, and this movie doesn't show it that much until the sequel. The sequel does a really good job of doing that, but this movie in particular just it shows more of his relationship with his friends and how being a superhero affects that.
I agree. I wish they had, and I know they, like you said, they elaborate this more on the second movie, but I wish that they had elaborated a little more on like how he made the suit. Like they barely did anything with that.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really the Superman, not Superman, Spider-Man training. Normally it takes a little longer, but I was totally fine with it. It that part seemed kind of rushed. Like you never. The one thing I didn't like was you never really felt that he was strapped for cash or that they were struggling to get by. They had one little instance in the beginning with Uncle Ben losing his job or whatever, but besides that, it didn't quite feel like the Peter Parker I was used to as far as struggling financially and such. But they did a nice. They really highlighted how much it affected his family and friends. Him being Spider-Man.
One thing, if I had to nitpick about the film, is that Peter Parker doesn't gain confidence throughout the film. Uh, in the original comic book line, I understand this is a big love letter to the original cheesy 1950s. It's trying to be that Peter Parker. At the same time, though, in the comic book line, Peter Parker gains confidence over time. So once he has the ability to be Spider-Man, you see him start to slowly gain confidence. He doesn't wear his glasses anymore, which he does that a little bit in this film, but he's still like really quiet when he talks. He's really shy still. In the comic book line, he does his hair differently. He stops wearing his glasses. He starts talking to women more. He gains a little more confidence. And then this one, it's just he's more or less the same as he was at the beginning of the film.
I'd argue that it's very off and on because he certainly got a little more outgoing with MJ and such. But one major thing that felt really off to me was how he was as a person in this movie because he basically killed the guy that killed Uncle Ben and he wasn't sorry about it.
Well, that's how it happens in the original comic book line to a certain degree. It's the guy edges closer and closer to the window and he falls out.
Right, but it's still essentially Spider. Like, and he's not mad about it either. Like, he's not. It seemed rather counterintuitive to what Uncle Ben told him. I could be wrong. And another thing I didn't really like was him and MJ, because that's kind of a sleazy thing to do to your friend, especially at the end of the movie. Like he's just at the funeral talking it up to MJ, like it wasn't just his. Like he's not like he's seriously chatting it up with MJ, who just broke up with his best friend. They're at his best friend's dad's funeral. Like it's kind of a strange scenario. And I did not appreciate that. That's not cool, man.
Yeah, this if I had to talk about the casting in this movie, I absolutely hate the casting of MJ and Harry Osborn.
Harry wasn't so bad in the fact that he was barely in it, but MJ just felt weird to me. I'm not sure why. She was just a little off.
It's because in the comics she's supposed to be
Flirtatious,
well, a little more adventurous and stuff. Like the main reason in the original comic line that they break up is because she's way too fast for Peter. Like her lifestyle.
I remember.
And yeah, like her lifestyle's way too fast, and that's when Peter meets Gwen finally, and that's when that whole fiasco starts.
Yeah. Yeah. There's certainly some issues with this film, but we do have to take some liberties. This is the first Spider-Man film. They didn't have any references to look back on besides the comic books, because the comic books weren't exactly perfect in some regards either. I prefer the way the movie does some things, especially throughout the entire Spider-Man timeline, but
I like that Harry and Peter in this universe are, I think it's like the ultimate comic line. I can't remember, but in the original comic book line, Harry and Peter weren't friends in high school. This makes a little more sense as they would be friends in high school.
yes, it felt pretty well. Oh, that's another thing that's kind of cringe is just Why can't they just make it different? Why does Peter Parker have to be in high school? They all look like they're 25 in that entire high school. You're not fooling anybody, you know.
Yeah, there's like that part when the teacher's like, I will
The
fail.
teacher looked just like
I
him.
will fail you if anybody talks again. And he looks like he's 19. And there's
They
Flash
looked older
Thomas that
than
looks
he
like he's
was.
30 years old.
Oh man, it was very funny though. I just love how they pretend to be high school. Like this is the reason why I thought high school is so different as a kid. No, it's very very. It's not that. There's not full grown adults running around.
Yeah, if we're gonna talk about the Raimi trilogy, we need to talk about the spicy memes that are in this.
They really ripped me out of a couple moments because right when Uncle Ben is dying, you see this crying Peter Parker meme. And I'm like, "Dog, got it. This totally ruined that for me."
I was watching these with my younger brother who's 10, and he just started to bust out laughing. He's like, "Oh, Uncle Bed's dead. Oh, it's an emotional moment." That, and I was quoting moments of the movie, like right before Norman Osborn walks up to Peter. I was like, I'm something of a scientist myself, Peter.
Oh, it takes you right out of the movie, but that's not necessarily the movie's fault. That's more just the internet taking just doing what it
I
does.
wouldn't want to fight me either.
In general though, I think that for a first try, it went fairly well.
Mhm.
I like certain aspects of the action. I like that it wasn't world ending, everything. It was more of a personal vendetta almost. And it made the villain a lot more convincing than a lot of other like current Marvel villains where it's just a random person. It was, despite how cheesy even that looked, the whole transformation thing with Norman, at least he was something to Peter, and he personally attacked Peter. He knew Aunt May, so he attacked her. He totally disregarded Harry and MJ, but I like that it had a bit of a more personal take to him, and it really set up the. I think the Green Goblin was actually decent in this movie. I think the fights could have been a little better choreographed and such. I think there could have been a little more going on, but I don't mind that it was smaller in scale, you know.
I have a very big problem with the Green Goblin, and it's because of that mask. I just and it's more so just because it's an early 2000s comic book movie, so they had to do things where it wouldn't be cheat. Like, not saying the movie's not cheesy, but it wouldn't be like if somebody who's not familiar with Spider-Man were to look at the original comic books, and if you would have brought that to the screen, people would have been like, what the heck is going on? So I don't like that the suit is like this fully mechanized Power Rangers suit. I absolutely hate it. But I love the performance of Willem Dafoe. When Willem Dafoe's out of the suit, he's awesome.
Yeah, it was a. I liked the casting quite a bit for Norman. He fit quite well.
The other thing I didn't like was the Spider-Man suit. Not saying the suit in general, but just you'll see when it comes to this original trilogy, one big problem when you're following Peter Parker or Spider-Man is his costume has no emotional range. And it's the same thing with the Green Goblin. Anytime they're talking to each other, like that scene on the roof, you only have to pick up on their emotions through their voices. You can't see their mouth going up and down, through the
It
mask.
was a massive disconnect, especially when both of them were talking, because it felt like they were like maybe saying it on set, but
Mm-hmm.
neither of them. You had the mask for Green Goblin, you had the mask for Spider-Man. It looked like they were like it made you feel like they were just talking into a microphone afterwards, because
Yeah,
there's no way that they recorded on set, and it took a fair amount. It was noticeable enough to where it kind of detracted from the experience.
the worst scene, in my opinion, is when he rescues MJ and they're on that roof scene, and it's just the camera and it's pointed right at his mask, and he's like saying something really emotional, but the mask is just, it's masking the performance, so you can't really see what he's saying. That's why, with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, they made the excellent choice of making it so then his eyes can squint and stuff.
Yeah, because that's how it was in the comics. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they had to have a reason for it. But I think it was like in this weird uncanny valley where you could see like they attempted to make his nose and stuff. You could like like it looked like you were looking at his face, but without any of the movement. Like it looked like it was just fabric resting on his nose, but that was where they stopped. So it would have looked better if it was even just solid and it just was totally round like in the comics. It would have looked a little silly, but at least it would have made sense. But now it just looks like a mannequin's talking to you.
Yeah, that's why they actually, when it comes to most of the Spider-Man fights before Tom Holland's, that's why most of the end fights, he'll have his mask blown off, like in this one, is because of that reason. They want more emotion from the actual person. They couldn't at the time get it to where his eyes would bug out and stuff. It would look weird on screen without having a actual feasible reason. So that's why in this one and in all the sequels, you have his mask get blown off and you see his face.
Which is a good call. They did what they could in that regard.
Which Peter gets absolutely annihilated in the end of this one.
He sure does. It makes you think the entire time. It's like, how did you even get hit in the first place? What about spider senses? He's able to do like a standing backflip to spoiler alert, kill Norman Osborn's Green Goblin without even looking at the thing. But he'll just stand there and just take it from the Green Goblin for what feels like forever with tons of opportunities to dive out of the way. It was very inconsistent in this movie. It was very convenient, at least.
Yeah. So your overall thoughts?
I thought it was a fun movie to watch.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about that. Definitely things that needed to be improved upon, and thankfully are in future movies, and certainly a product of its time. But in general, it's certainly something that you could watch, and it doesn't hold up 100%, but it's 75% there.
Mm-hmm.
And you?
Yeah, I think it was a really great start for it. Opened the doorway to a lot of what we have now. A lot of the dialogue and effects are because of its time and what it's trying to accomplish. But it's an entertaining movie, and I recommend it.
For sure. Even if you just want to laugh at some cringy dialogue and fights.
Or memes.
Yeah, that's definitely. Well, that should wrap up our review this week of the original Spider-Man. We're going to be continuing this series over the next few weeks, but we will try to squeeze in some video game news and movie news as it comes out. So look forward to that. Let us know in the comments if there's anything you'd like us to talk about. Like, comment, subscribe, do whatever. You can look at our Instagram if you want. That should be in the description. And have a great rest of your day.
See you guys.